it's not.
We're testing the waters a little bit here. Here's how I'm gonna do it. Yeah, that's right. You're seeing me. I'm live. No, I'm not. But I am a YouTube now. So that's really big news for me. Probably not for you, but anyways, I decided that I wanted to talk about a movie today. So, the movie we decided to watch today is called HAINE. It is a French film. It came out in 1995, all right? And in French, if you didn't know, that means hate, which is already very interesting. It's shot in black and white, and it came out in the year of 1995. Write that down. It's gonna be on the test later at the end of this video, so keep that in mind. Yeah.
Talk to the YouTube. Okay, so he's gone. All right, so this is what we're dealing with. I've been friends with him for like 14 years. It looks like this guy has... I was just like, that's crazy, yo. What?
What'd you say to the YouTube?
Nothing.
Weird.
Weird. Spoiler warning.
Well, we already did it. I don't exactly know how the structure of this is gonna work. I guess first we should probably talk about the narrative of the film. So the plot is incited by two main things. So firstly, you have the beating of a young youth whose name is Abdel. That leaves him in a critical state in the hospital. The second thing that really moves the plot along is Vince acquiring a gun that one of the cops lost during the riots that the film opens on. So those are kind of like the two main things that sort of balance each other out throughout the narrative. The film also takes place over a day, so it's a really interesting way to frame the lives of the characters, give us a glimpse into their lives, sort of a day in the life kind of piece. So yeah, the first half of the film takes place in the projects, showing us the aftermath of the riots and what life is like for our three main characters. While their environment isn't very hospitable, it is theirs. You know, they walk around the streets with confidence, they talk to the people that are around them. Most of these people, you get a sense that they know them, that they're comfortable with them, or that they have some kind of shared cultural language. And this is all heightened by the filmmaking. Each location has like visual emphasis. There's always things happening or some kind of visual staple of every environment. There's usually some kind of graffiti or other street art. So we see that these are very kind of lived in communities, even though they're kind of economically destitute. There's this really amazing scene exemplifies all of this, where Vince and Saeed are walking around the project. A DJ starts playing some music and it's sort of reverberating throughout the whole neighborhood. The camera sort of starts floating up and around these projects as we hear the music sort of blasting through them, and we get a sense that there's a unity happening in these projects. Another really good example of this is when the three main characters, they're walking around, they hear the sound of a motorcycle bike, and immediately Hubert can identify and know whose bike it is, and the other characters are like asking like, oh, is it this person who's the brother of this person? So there's a really good sense of community happening throughout parts of the first half. Even though the film is mostly just focused on a day in the life of these three characters, it still finds ways to build tension throughout the narrative. There's a few different instances of this, a lot of different tools that the director has in his tool belt to sort of create tension in a scene. From a filmmaking perspective, there's a lot of different smash cuts and a lot of loud audio cues. A lot of that builds tension throughout the story because it breaks your attention, it sort of interrupts maybe a peaceful moment. Time is one of the main framing devices of the film because it takes place in such a short period of time. Some moments are accentuated by having a flash of what time it is, and then it also has an audio cue of a clock ticking. The use of time is really effective in this movie for me because it gives you the sense that you're counting down towards something. Throughout the film, you are expecting something big to happen. When Vince first reveals he has the gun, we also learn that he intends on killing a cop if Abdel dies. We see that there's stakes happening throughout the story. We see that if things turn out a certain way, then Vince is most definitely going to commit a very violent actions. And so we have characters around him trying to convince him otherwise. He's introduced in the movie via this like smash cut to him just dancing in this dimly lit basement, doing like a goofy polka slash breakdance. No, but it was very cool. It does give you a sense of his character that even though he is one of the more conflicted and kind of violent characters, there's still that part of like a goofy innocence to his character. One of the main elements of Vince's character is his fetishization of violence. He has a thing with violence. When he's introduced, he's imitating Robert De Niro's character in Taxi Driver. He essentially like has his Joker moment 10 minutes into the movie, so we really get the strong inclination as an audience that he is maybe troubled. His main character arc is sort of how he views violence and how he when we see that Vince has the gun and the characters go to the hospital, we see that he's acting different almost immediately. He is a little bit more on edge, but in a confrontation, he's a lot more emboldened, I guess you would say. He's, getting up in these cops' faces. He's urging them to pull out their guns and make a scene. He has this desire to like strike back against the institutions that have disrespected the people around him and himself. And then we have Saeed. He's probably my favorite character, even though he gets maybe less attention than Vince throughout the film. But he's introduced at the very beginning. We're seeing him looking out at a line of police officers. He's sort of depicted as an observer throughout most of the movie. He's just outside looking at everything. He's the middleman between different perspectives throughout the film. When Hubert, Vince, and Saeed are usually lined up in a shot or blocked in a shot, he's right in the middle of them. He sort of plays that position of being in between his two friends who have two wildly different perspectives. And so it's very interesting to see how he grapples with that, how he tries to unify them and bring them together, or how he tries to de-escalate certain situations. So at the halfway mark of the movie, the characters arrive downtown, and this represents sort of a shift in the film. This is all signified with the dolly zoom. With the way the dolly zoom works, their environment sort of falls out of focus, and it sort of just boxes our characters into their environment. Throughout the second half of the movie, we just see that there's a lot less visually in their environment to latch onto. Further on, we see the contrasts between the inner city and the projects when Saeed is remarking that the police officers in the inner city are so much more polite than they are in the projects. They're trying to get into someone's apartment when they just cause a scene because their presence is just like a disruption in this environment, and that the filmmaking sort of complements this. All of the locations are visually less engaging, they're less distinct, more sterile, less populated. The direction puts a lot less visual emphasis on the environments and usually puts it more on tighter shots of the characters, highlighting the tone. The characters then have an encounter with a guy named Astrid, which said means Snoopy, which is very weird name for somebody, but I like it. He's a very avid cocaine user. So the characters are really only there so that Saeed can get this money that he needs from him. Things really quickly escalate, and it all starts as soon as Vince reaches to like look at Snoopy's gun. And then Snoopy does this weird like trick where he's playing Russian roulette with Vince. He challenges him to start playing this game with him. So they very quickly just start pointing their guns at each other. They get kicked out, but as they're leaving, Snoopy reveals that the bullets weren't even inside of the gun. Snoopy was essentially just trolling Vince, and then Vince like lost his mind and they get kicked out and they don't get their money. That scene, it seems kind of pointless, but I like it for a few different reasons. For one, the character of Snoopy, his performance, and the few things we know about him are just very weird. Like he's walking around his apartment in just a towel and a gun. He's obviously under the influence of illegal substances. When you're watching the movie for the first time, you don't know like what he's gonna do because he's just so all over the place. When you mix that with Vince's character of he's just constantly this close away from just blowing up on someone or causing a confrontation, that makes for a very intense scene. His interaction with Vince also just highlights how Vince's like default reaction to any scenario is just further escalation, further conflict. That's his main character arc throughout the film, so I just think this scene just goes to show that more. Saeed and Hubert, they get arrested by these plainclothes police officers. Vince is able to escape. So this sort of separates them for a brief moment in the narrative, which I think is a good choice because Vince, he's the character I think who learns the most throughout the film. He has the most pronounced character arc, and so separating him for a time in the narrative is nice because we get to see how he is grappling with his sort of internal problems just on his own. We see him go to a theater. The theater scenes are interesting because the sound design, we don't see anything that's playing in the theater, we don't see it, but we hear it, and it's just like endless gunfire, endless violence, and just further reincorporating this idea that Vince's mentality is just constantly fed violence. A shot towards the end of this that really sticks out to me is this kid that's mimicking Vince. Vince goes to do this again, and the kid is mimicking him. And so that's sort of showing this idea that our problems with violence is just being handed off to our next generation, which is kind of a sad thought. And it's a very subtle, small moment, but it just plays into the themes of the movie. You could say that about the entire movie, which I really like. Maybe I'm just reading further into it than other people, but like almost every detail of the movie you can have some interpretation for, which is really, really, really epic. We see a scene of cops essentially giving an instructional like how to a rookie cop on how to do a police brutality using Saeed and Hubert as their examples. The scene is really intense, and we see a rookie cop who's sort of watching this, he's onlooking all of this, and the performance specifically of the rookie cop in the scene just like really elevates it because he doesn't say a word throughout the entire scene, but you just really get the sense that he is really visibly disturbed by what's happening, but he can't say anything about it. It's really dark scene, but again, it's really important to understanding the conflict between the police and the, you know, the everyday people, the real life impact of this cycle of violence that the film is talking about. But anyways, Vince is still on his own. He joins some older friends for a drive around the town. They try to get into a club, they fail, and one of the older guys, he just pulls out a gun and he starts unloading on one of the bouncers. The direction specifically helps make this scene seem really intense because at the beginning of the scene while you're driving around, there's a really slick shot of the car going around. And then when the shooting actually happens, it's overlaid with Vince's reaction to it happening and just his pure like whoa of this brutal, senseless violence taking place in front of him. So we see Vince reunite with the group. They sort of go about their day again. They go on a tour to an art exhibit. They try to steal a car. They go to a joint and they go to a roof. You know, they just kind of hang around for this chunk of the movie. It's a lot more low-key, but it does give us a good sense of their characters. We see how they like to goof off. It's just a nice moment to sort of take a deep breath before the ending of the movie. They're just lounging around this mall, I think. They're watching the news when suddenly we see that Abdel, he's died. And then suddenly there's a cut and Vince is standing out in the street and we see essentially what is his fantasy of killing a police officer. It's very clear to the audience at this point that Vince, he's ready to take some sort of action, get even somehow. The audience is sort of getting ready for this violent climax when his friends are stuck up by this group of neo-Nazis. He is able to intervene with his gun. He gets one of them alone.
A fun fact about this movie, the director actually plays the neo-Nazi that Vince is threatening in this scene.
And he essentially has the perfect opportunity right in front of him to get his justice that he's been craving so much in the movie. He's saying like, I'm ready to prove to you that I'm serious about this. It's a very intense moment, and it's a real nail-biting moment. But Hubert's next to him, and he's essentially telling him to do it. He's like, you know, you've been wanting to kill a cop this whole time. Now we have the perfect opportunity. You've got a skinhead here. You know, there may be good cops, but there's no such thing as a good Nazi. So why don't you just do it? He even cocks the trigger back for him. He's like doing it in a way where you can tell he's goading him and he's not being serious, but it's very effective. Vince, he learns his lesson though. He lets the skinhead go. I like this sequence a lot, really, because it puts Vince in a situation where he could very easily kill this person and get away with it. He really has every reason to do it logically within the narrative. And the only thing that could reasonably change his mind in that moment is just seeing the face of the person he's about to kill. That's enough to do it for him. Just seeing this face of just the most vile person you could possibly think of, a Nazi, and he still can't do it. So I think this is a really satisfying moment because it just teaches Vince his lesson, and it shows that like it's just taking a step further down this downward spiral. You know, the movie's about to wrap up. Vince gives Hubert the gun, sort of a symbolic rejection of the violence that he'd sort of been embracing throughout the entire movie. He's finally letting it go, which for the audience feels great. It's a nice sense of relief, but that moment is very suddenly and very sadly yanked away from us when we see a squad car roll up, see some rookie cops get out, and one thing leads to another, and a cop accidentally kills Vince. It's a really shocking moment. Like it's almost like a jump scare. It's so unexpected, and everyone's reaction is just pure like stunned. Again, just another genius writing situation where you have Hubert, who throughout the entire movie has been preaching anti-violence, and he is seeing his friend dead in the street, and he's seeing the person responsible for it, and it leaves him like what do I do? And Saeed's just watching all of this, and then it cuts to black. We hear the gunshot and the movie's over. It's really tragic because you want to see these characters end in a good spot, but I think for the movie to earn the message it's going for, it has to have realistic or a more tragic ending, because I think what the movie is trying to communicate is that if we keep on going down this path as a society, if we keep on letting this cycle of violence and hate continue, then it's not going to end in a happy way for us. It's going to obviously end in this very violent and very tragic way. Yeah, I think the ending is really effective. I don't want it to just be, you know, one guy's opinion here. I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy. Take what I say with a grain of salt. I sought out some criticisms here on the old internet. I'm going to try to address these as best as possible. So the first criticism that I think holds probably the most weight is the lack of female perspective. So quoting a Rotten Tomatoes review, I don't know who wrote it, I wasn't smart enough to get credit for this, but what they're saying is this film is misogynist and macho. Fast talking, wisecracking, probably worth watching for the ending. Depends whether you can feel sympathetic for the protagonists. Social commentary, but it does ring true in some ways for me. Where were the women in this film? Usually the butt of foul insults by testosterone-fueled young men. Again, I do think this criticism holds some water. I do think that in many ways it's addressing how men internalize and sort of lash out with violence. So I don't think that the film is necessarily trying to glorify the characters' actions, particularly when we're speaking on how they treat women. It's usually they're kind of shooing them away or they're just trying to flirt with them. I don't think that that's a positive thing in the film. I think it's a way to accentuate the fact that the characters aren't really equipped to positively interact with most aspects of society. Interacting with women is one of the ways that that manifests. Whether or not that was the director's intention, I'm not sure. I do think it worked for me though.
Pas beaucoup de filles dans le film.
Ah ouais, non, il n'y a pas de filles dans le film, non.
Et quand il y en a, c'est pas très flatteur.
Ah, c'est les casse-couilles. Non, 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 c'est pas ça, c'est que non, on va pas partir sur une histoire de love story en cité. En plus, c'est pas vrai, c'est-à-dire que tu fonctionnes, tu balades dans une cité, tu vois, il y a les filles d'un côté et les mecs de l'autre, elles traînent pas ensemble. De toute façon, tu peux pas traîner avec une fille de la cité parce qu'elle a forcément un frère. Si elle a un frère, t'es dans la merde, donc c'est pas possible.
That's why so many of the scenarios, including ones where they try and pick up women, just ends with them getting kicked out. So Yeah, that's what I think. Another criticism I saw was that the end doesn't deliver. Now, I sort of just talked about the ending. It does seem kind of rushed when you first watch it, but I think when you go into it the second time and you absorb it again with the context of the entire movie in mind and all of these different pieces, it does sort of make sense. I do think they could have spent more time on it, but I do think it does benefit from it just sort of coming out of nowhere and just leaving you with this kind of WTF moment. It does give you much more of a shock as an audience, and it leaves you with that, and it sort of forces you to chew on it a little bit on your way out. And sort of you're walking out of the movie and you're like munching on it. Your last criticism that I kind of saw mentioned a few times online was I just labeled it low down hooligans, but essentially what that means is, how do we sympathize with these characters? They're low down hooligans, they're ruffians, they're kind of street fools, they're getting into trouble. I don't think this is a very valid criticism of the movie. Frankly, I think that even though these characters aren't pure of heart protagonists, the fact that they are kind of more gritty and more realistic interpretations of what someone living on the street would kind of go through and how they would see the world, I think that lends itself more to a realistic, grounded experience. Anyways, this is a really good movie. If I haven't convinced you to watch it by now, I'm really sorry. On the surface level, it deals with, police brutality, politics, racism, like all these things that are still very current discussion in our time, but it also addresses them in a more timeless manner. It speaks to the sort of bigger picture, how much hate and how much violence is truly like woven into the fabric of our society, and how much that just brings us down, and ultimately where we will end up because of it. I don't think it's necessarily condescending in the way it presents it either, because these characters are so relatable and they're not constantly thinking that they know better than everyone else around them. They're very much caught in it themselves, and I think that helps us get a sense of the situation we are also caught in. And it doesn't really matter what perspective you personally align with, because this film is incredibly nuanced in its depiction. It's about a lot of more things. It's about a lot of more things than just presenting one myopic view on any political issue. And it's got a lot more to offer than just its social commentary too. It's got a lot of comedy in it. It's got a lot of tense, sort of nail-biting moments. Some excellent directing, excellent use of like cinematography and lighting that just really set the tone, really get you into these characters' mind spaces. And it's just a flippin' good time. We're in a mystery location. We're sitting in mystery chairs.
You have no idea where we are.
We could
Why
be
did we
in.
say where we are?
We could be in Ohio,
Yeah. You don't know where you live. We could live in fucking
Cancun,
Siberia.
or we could be in France, specifically Paris,
Good
where the movie that we're going to be talking about takes place. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I just couldn't pass it up. My name is Steven. I live with my parents. But we're also in love.
One could say that.
We've been best friends for like 16, 15, 14? Long time.
15, 14 years.
Long time.
Yeah.
No.
Something like that.
Happy we're getting this YouTube phase out of our life early.
The next video is going to be a hit instantly. Viral,
Yeah.
right?
Cool.
So Steven, what would you say is your experience with film?
My experience with film, my experience filming or watching? Or, enjoying?
Movies and you. How have they...
Okay. I like to think of myself, I don't like to think of myself as an intellectual, but I like to think of myself as someone who would, someone that indulges in more sophisticated things than the normal person, than the average person. That's how I like to think of it. However, on the scale that is, I like to think of myself that way. But I literally only enjoy, I enjoy watching movies, but I only enjoy like cool epic cinematography, cool camera angles, cool, lighting and camera work, only because of him. He's shown me he just got me into the craziest, weirdest fucking movies. And
I actually made him say that off camera.
a lot of them, most of them are bangers.
So that's to say we have a lot of disagreements. When
I
it
don't know
comes
if
to
this one
movies.
is a banger, like knock out of the park.
See, I would give this one a 5 freaking star, dude. Out of 5, that is. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. In my
Really?
opinion,
10 out of
yes. And so that's why I have a few questions to ask you. What were your like most general opinions on the movie? Like, if you had to sum it up 2 or 3 sentences, what would you say about it?
It was a good movie. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't bad in any way. It was really all the way they lived. I don't know what it was. They just like in the way they dressed. They all seemed super dope.
Yeah, they
all
seem
seemed
like cool characters.
people. Like I was like, damn.
Well,
When they were,
yeah,
like smoking
one.
in jail. I was like,
Not that we do that.
no
though.
said, dude.
Yeah, not for any of the feds watching the video.
That's been rolling for 23 minutes, and 15, 20 of them were just.
I'm pretty excited
I can't.
to see this. Wait, come back. I need you. I need you, Steven. Okay. He's back, boys.
Yeah.
All right. To get this ball rolling again.
So, I really enjoyed how all the characters, how the younger characters dressed. I don't know if you can agree with that, but like they all dressed super swaggy.
They had drip.
They were saucing all over the place. Like the Herbert had like on these like dope pants and like sick like fits that like you'd see now and be like if you saw that in the street, you'd be like
Stuff that just young people universally enjoy, like rap music and
they
break
cuss
dancing, and they
all the
cuss
time.
so much.
And you read
know?
it too. That's the funny part.
Yeah, and because it's subtitles, you have to read it. Speaking of subtitles, what did you think about watching a movie with subtitles? Like, how was it for you as someone who doesn't watch a lot of foreign films?
I never watch, like, it just pisses me off to fucking read my movies. I just kind of want to listen to it. I feel like I process it better. Like, I completely missed a couple parts of the movie. I may have checked my phone. Yeah, but that it didn't really get in the way that much. Like, it was very easy for me to. It was very followable.
Yeah,
I kept up. It wasn't like super long sentences. It was always just like short, cool.
and the characters use a lot of slang that I think it makes it very easy
Condenses.
for you to sort of slip into their conversations. A lot of the dialogue is very well written, I
Dude.
think is what we're getting.
Yeah.
A lot of that for this movie does come down to the performances, because their characters, especially Vin's, they're such explosive, angry, like, people who have so much internalized violence. Sort of using that to segue into, like, what did you think about these sort of, like, political statements of the film?
It felt that there were definitely two sides. It was almost like the Montagues and the Capulets almost. It was like
Yeah.
the police, there was like the pigs, and then like the homies. When everyone went to saw their family was like cool and like they cared about each other. And so it was like everyone was like super tight. I mean, there were obviously conflicts between the characters. They were like constantly fighting. But that's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great strengths of this film is its nuance. What did you...
I'm out this bitch.
No, come here. I want to ask you
The
about
interview's
specific...
over. No.
Few more questions. What did you think the cow represented?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. I have no idea.
Yeah?
I was watching that and that made no sense to me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that's
be honest.
definitely
I'm
one
not
of...
gonna try and seem smart.
Yeah?
I didn't catch. I mean, I saw the cow and I was like, "That's so strange." He ran into the cow and then he saw the cow, and then I like those two things connected, but then it never came up again. What the fuck's up with this fucking cow?
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of, like, two things that I personally haven't even really come to a major conclusion about. It's one of those things where it's very, very rare, but you can tell it means something.
Hey, you ran into a cow.
France, bro. Well,
Can 90% of this video be about the fucking cow?
well,
What the
that's
cow
because
is?
for me, it's like...
Let's like get boards up here. Let's get sheets right down. What does it mean?
What does it mean? What does it mean? I have a bit of a theory. I don't know how much it makes sense. It could represent, like, an innocence or a sense of purity that sometimes we see in even the most like desolate, rundown places ever. We see this humanity or this life to kind of urge out, and so be something positive, because to me it's a part of nature in this very concrete, rundown part of France.
Dude, I was dead ass gonna say hope.
Yeah. Let me take a sippy of my
I'm just
Wawa.
like thinking about how this is gonna look. I know I'm gonna rewatch this, see me sitting in this chair, and immediately hate it. No matter, you have to make it good with editing, please.
Yeah. What time is it? It's 9. Sheesh. Okay. Here, wait, let me do the turn transition. So, Steven, what did you think about the guy taking the shit in the
The
bathroom?
shitter. So, got no idea.
Yeah?
Yeah, cool story. He's incredibly short.
Yeah, very short guy. They're not really giving you all of the pieces to put it together, which I kind of like, but I still don't know what it means either.
Yeah, you
Fully.
do like those weird mysteries.
So, Steven, what did you think about the ending of the movie?
I don't exactly. I didn't necessarily. I think it could have been done better. Bazinga. So,
Bazinga.
Vince dies, and it's sort of like out of nowhere. It almost seems like the police officer didn't even mean to shoot him.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And like Herbert is standing behind the police officer. Herbert's behind him with the gun, and he like sees his friend get shot, and he's just like standing there. And he's just like they don't really have any emotion, and then it turns to Saeed, and he doesn't really make a face either, and that sort of threw me off. But you know they do end up shooting each other. But
Yeah. If you had to be specific as possible, what were your complaints about the ending?
it just sort of felt very like rushed,
Felt rushed.
and it didn't it didn't get to the conclusion of the movie because the whole movie is like if our friend dies, I'm gonna shoot a cop,
Yeah.
right? And then it like showed his friend dying, and he just like, and it never really felt like there was like a big resolution until like right at this very smack dab second of the movie, and then that didn't even give me very much. It was like
So
I was
you
just
didn't-
like building up.
It seems like an accident. It doesn't even seem intentional.
Mhm.
That's because it wasn't. Some context behind this film, it's based on the accidental murder of someone who was in police custody around the time of this movie.
Oh, really?
Come in,
That's
editing
awesome.
me will come in and say the more specific version of this.
D'un truc qui s'est passé, une bavure qui s'est passée il y a 2 ans, d'un mec qui s'appelait Macomé qui s'est fait tirer dessus dans le 18e, qui s'est pris une balle dans la tête. C'était un mec de 17 ans. Et je me suis posé la question comment le flic a pu en arriver à telle haine pour lui tirer une balle dans la tête tandis qu'il pouvait rien faire, c'était évident. Et qu'il a même pas voulu, enfin il a certainement pas voulu tirer, mais il lui a fait peur quand même. Il a mis le flingue, il a armé le chien. Et comment le môme a réussi à le mettre dans une telle situation de haine.
So, I
Damn.
liked it a
That
lot.
was-
It doesn't compromise at all because it gives you with that shred of hope of like the characters learn their lesson, man. It's gonna be okay. But then it yanks it away, and it's sad. It's depressing, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's a lot of truth of we are on a downward spiral.
Society.
Yo, society, bro. We said
Society,
it.
dude, I'm
We
done
finally
with this shit.
arrived.
Fuck this shit, dude.
We finally arrived at the end.
Ah.
Society.
All right,
I mean-
so you're retiring?
Yeah. So, given this interview,
This is gonna be guys. This is gonna be our last video.
This is our first and last video, and you know what?
Hey, pleasure.
Drop a like.
Yeah, drop a like. Last video, gotta drop hella likes, hella subs. Turn on that noti bell. Let's go.
Dang, you rattled them off. I didn't even have to, bro.
Dang, bro.
Thank you,
I got
man.
it, bro.
Alright. Have a good one, y'all.
I think that was okay.
I think that was okay.